A new study finds that 26% of Americans with a completely normal BMI already meet the clinical definition of obesity, meaning the number on the scale is hiding something the tape measure would catch. Trust in the federal government just hit 25%, the lowest reading in more than 2 decades of polling, and down from 50% back in 2002. And a brain imaging study out of Japan finds that your brain works measurably harder to follow a story on a tablet as opposed to paper. Same comprehension, more work. While everyone was busy arguing about politics, a bunch of other things happened. I'm Keith Conrad, and this is News Side Quest. Let's get into it.
Hear ye, hear ye! Where are my party people at?
Researchers from Keck Medicine of USC published a study in the Annals of Internal Medicine this month that should change how a lot of people think about their last physical. For decades, doctors have leaned on body mass index, basically your weight divided by your height squared, as the standard screening tool for obesity. The problem is BMI cannot distinguish between muscle and fat, and it cannot tell you where on your body the fat actually sits. This distinction turns out to matter enormously. In 2025, the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology Commission introduced a more precise standard called clinical obesity, which contains body measurements, waist circumference, waist to hip ratio, with evidence that excess fat is actually causing organ or physical dysfunction. The USC team applied this new standard to about 5,600 adults from a major new health survey. The finding was that 26.1% of adults with a completely normal BMI in the 18.5 to 25 range met the criteria for clinical obesity anyway. Among people classified as merely overweight by BMI, that number jumped to roughly 50%. The mechanism is about where the fat actually lives on your body. Fat that accumulates deep in the abdomen, called visceral fat, causes dangerous inflammation in your organs. Fat just under the skin elsewhere in your body carries far less metabolic risk. Two people can have the identical BMI and completely different actual health risks because BMI has no way of seeing the difference between the two. The lead researcher said, many people assume that if their BMI says they are not obese, they don't have to worry about the many health problems linked to obesity. That assumption for a quarter of normal BMI Americans is just wrong. There's a simple way to check your own waist to height ratio at home. If you're curious, wrap a soft tape measure around your bare waist at belly button level. Breathe out gently, don't suck in your stomach, and compare that number to half your height. If your waist measurement is under half your weight, that's generally a good sign. I'm not gonna lie, this stings. I'm gonna go for a walk as soon as I finish this thing. Has a number from a doctor visit ever genuinely changed how you thought about your health, even if you looked completely fine on paper beforehand?
Ugh, I can actually hear you getting fatter.
A new Fox News poll of about 1,000 registered voters found that only 25% of Americans say they genuinely trust the federal government. 74% said they don't. That's the lowest reading in this particular poll's 24-year history. The earliest Fox News polling on this question, taken during the Bush administration in 2002, found more than half of voters trusted the federal government. That number has not climbed back above 40 since the second Obama administration. Trust has hovered in the low 30s for over a decade now, hitting a previous low of 31% in June of 2023, in the weeks following President Trump's federal indictment over classified documents. This new reading is 6 points below even that. The breakdown by party is notable. 83% of Democrats say they don't trust the federal government, up from 73% a year earlier. About 2/3 of Republicans expressed distrust too, alongside 80% of independents. This isn't a story about one party losing faith while the other gains it. Distrust is rising broadly across the board, regardless of who currently holds power. The economic context is directly tied in. More than half of voters in the same poll hold a pessimistic outlook on the economy. Only 12% think they're personally getting ahead financially. 44% feel they're falling behind, and 43% say they're holding steady at best. This connects pretty directly to Friday's American Dream story because they're measuring the same erosion from different angles. The Gallup poll found 69% of Americans still believe they personally will achieve the American dream, even as confidence that the system works for everyone broadly has fallen. This new poll suggests something related but distinct. People aren't just questioning whether the system is fair. A growing majority simply doesn't believe the institution running it is trustworthy. Full stop, regardless of who's in charge of it at any given moment. It's hard to imagine why this would be the case. Distrust this broad, sustained across multiple administrations in both parties, points to something structural rather than purely partisan. Is there any institution, government, media, company, anything that you actually trust more than you did 5 years ago?
I want the people to know that they still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad.
Researchers at the University of Tokyo published a study in PLOS ONE that stated somewhat charmingly with a manga publisher's question, can you actually prove a paper book is worth anything over a screen? So they put readers inside an MRI machine to find out. The setup was clever. They used a manga told in 2 halves, depicting the same events from 2 characters whose feelings about what happened don't match, meaning a reader genuinely has to hold both versions in their head and fit them together to fully understand the story. Some participants read the first half on paper, some on a tablet, with everything else controlled for, same size, same brightness. Then everyone read the second half inside the scanner while researchers watched their brains at work. The result on accuracy was a wash. Paper readers and tablet readers scored about the same on basic plot questions, but on harder questions requiring readers to connect information across both halves of the story, tablet readers took measurably longer, and their brain scans showed why. Their frontal language and integration regions had to work harder, recruiting additional right brain areas associated with heavy mental lifting and spatial reconstruction. Paper readers' brains stayed quieter during the same job. As one summary put it, the difference was the cost of the remembering, not the amount of it. The leading theory for why is about physical anchors. A printed page has a fixed location. You remember that detail appeared near the top of the left page, 2/3 through the book. A tablet screen looks identical no matter what page you're actually on. The text changes, but the physical frame never does. Without those spatial cues, your brain has to work harder to build what researchers call a story schema. It's an internal map of how everything fits together. I want to be fair to the limits of this study. It's small, 25 participants, and used manga rather than plain prose. The researchers expect ordinary novels would show similar effects, but expecting it isn't the same as actually proving it. Still, it adds a real mechanism to something a lot of people have long suspected from their own experience. Probably extends to being easier on the eyes, too, and the broader research on screens and eye strain backs that up independently. But the cognitive finding here is the more interesting one. For a beach read you'll forget by next week, the medium probably doesn't really matter all that much. For something you actually need to hold together in your head, a dense book, a complicated argument, anything you'll need to actually recall later, paper appears to give your brain a real advantage. Have you noticed any sort of real difference in how much you retain or enjoy something depending on whether you read it on paper or a screen?
You will enjoy it on as many levels as I do.
The Titanic series wrapped on side quests with the finale covering the aftermath, the inquiries, the changes to maritime law, and how the disaster reshaped how the world thought about safety at sea and just the world in general. If you followed the whole series, thank you. It's been a fun experience to make. If you haven't started, the entire arc is out there now. A free condensed version for everyone and a full extended cut for paid subscribers. Find Side Quests wherever you get your podcasts or at newsidequest.com.
Would you like to know more?
An 85-year-old man was arrested for street racing his sports car while smoking a cigarillo, reportedly hitting speeds over 100 miles per hour on the interstate. Sounds like he was just out there living his absolute best life. But I can say that because nobody got hurt. The car, the cigarillo, the triple-digit speed. There's a certain commitment to the bit that I respect even without endorsing it.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
A nurse pleaded guilty to selling nearly 3,000 fake nursing diplomas as part of a credential scam. Everybody has a side hustle these days. This is a genuinely bad one to pick, given that the product in question determines who's allowed to administer medication.
Was that wrong? Should I not have done that?
A LARPer running late to a competition was arrested for driving 106 miles per hour trying to make it on time. Was he LARPing as a race car driver? Whatever character he was actually supposed to be playing, this performance was not part of the script.
Let him go, Lou. Someone going that fast has no time for a ticket.
Auto glass repair businesses in Oakland are struggling now that car break-ins have declined after years of a thriving market built almost entirely on smashed windows. Someone out there specifically chose to start an auto glass repair business believing the smashed window economy was a golden age that would just last forever. That person's business plan has not aged well, and I genuinely feel for them.
You filthy criminals.
That's News Side Quest. 3 questions out there for you to consider this Monday. Whether a health number has ever genuinely changed how you thought about yourself, the one institution you trust more today than 5 years ago, assuming there is one, and whether you've noticed a real difference reading on paper versus a screen. Email me at newssidequest@gmail.com or hit me up in the Substack comments. See you tomorrow.